And then on the right, you have people who are allegedly pro-Second Amendment, anti-gun control people who are now saying, like, see, this is why you can't give transgenders guns. This is why we got to regulate guns. With why we got to have gun control over certain groups of people not having it. Moving on to the culture corner, we're talking about the Nashville school shooting this week. And basically,
eggshells,
where and why that narrative is being pushed in certain directions by certain groups and how dangerous that is for all of us. Now, on the one hand, you have the radical leftists who are saying, or at least implying, that this was to be expected, or probably shouldn't blame the shooter too much because, don't you know, Tennessee just recently, I don't know if they passed it or if it was still going through the Tennessee legislature at the time that it happened, but they are considering putting bans on, quote, gender affirming care, and that this is retaliation against Tennessee for doing that. And that somehow that makes it a little bit less wrong than it actually is. And then on the right, you have people who are allegedly pro-Second Amendment, anti-gun control people who are now saying, like, see, this is why you can't give transgenders guns. This is why we got to regulate guns. With why we got to have gun control over certain groups of people not having it. And it's just like, do none of you people hear yourselves? It's just to get one over on your political opponent, you're ready to jettison everything else that you allegedly stood for not 5 seconds ago.
Principles. If this isn't the exact definition or the exact showcase of how these people have zero principles and will say whatever the fuck they have to say to get reelected, more funding, more this, more that, this is the microcosm. Every time they stick to the narrative. So now Republicans are going for gun reform and Democrats are going for more psychiatric care for these people?
No, they're saying that, I mean, not all of them.
They're doubling down while the Republicans are backtracking.
This is a small minority on the left, I'm willing to concede, but suggesting that either because it was a Christian school, that it was somehow deserved.
The kid grew up in.
Because don't you know that Christians are these stupid backward people that are trying to literally genocide transgender people, and so they probably deserved it.
It's fair.
Is the subtle implication there. Or B, that the state of Tennessee is being punished because its elected representatives are considering legislation, again, if it hasn't already passed, I'm not sure where it stands, but is at least considering legislation that removes gender affirming care from the transgender community, and then that is further evidence of a genocide and against transgender people. So it's somehow warranted. So no, they're not even going the direction of these people need
psychiatric almost making
help.
Excuses.
They're saying you deserve it, essentially. Yeah. So isn't that interesting?
So let me get this straight. Columbine didn't deserve it. Sandy Hook didn't deserve it. Stoneman Douglas didn't deserve it.
No, right.
But
you don't deserve it if the shooter is a cis straight white male. If the shooter identifies with a political ideology or a
but all of a
group
sudden,
that we like, then maybe you deserved it.
When mental health comes into play, all of a sudden. But we can't really say that either, because mental health came into play with all the other shooters, because all the other shooters clearly had...
And they would never say that this was a result of mental health, because they would never concede that transgenderism has anything to do with mental health.
Because it can't.
It's not.
Because it's part of their doctrine.
To them. Correct, right.
In the holy church of go fuck yourself.
Right.
My point
so
being...
the only motivation for this particular shooter in their view, and again, this small minority on the left that suggests either outright says explicitly, because I have seen those as well, or implies that this happened is because it was retaliation for either the way this individual was raised in a Christian community, he went or she went to that school growing up, and what the Tennessee legislature is currently doing. They deserved it. That's the implication. It can't be mental illness. It can't be anything else because this is a person.
That sounds pretty cold-hearted coming from the bleeding heart liberals.
You would think, right? And with, might I add, and with a tool that they rail against in all other contexts. They don't want to focus on the gun at all in this context. They want to focus on victim
And they were
blaming.
saying that how tactical she was. It was.
Oh, I mean,
he was. Like, he knew to stay away from the windows. Like,
she.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I misrepresent their pronouns after
it was a biological female.
It was a biological female that.
Yeah.
So I wasn't misrepresenting them.
No,
he.
You were correctly gendering by saying he. In their view.
In
my view, that biology is determined by what your chromosomes are. You were misgendering her.
So I meant to insult. I'm sorry.
She.
Yes. She. So she learned a couple of tactics from Call of Duty to stay away from windows and to get high ground to look downstairs. And all of a sudden that made her, him, a tactician with weaponry.
I mean, I don't know who was lauding her tactics one way or another.
I can tell you who. The liberal media. They're like, oh, it was trained to perform its objectives because they knew to get high ground and stay away from windows. It's like, okay, how long do you want to hit on the periphery until you hit the main course? Is that nobody wants to deal with mental health in this society anymore. No one. We want to send people over to fight for justice, freedom, this, that, and the other. But once they come back and they're mentally scarred and changed, we don't really want to help them out so much. So what are we going to do? We got to save money in the government because we can't balance this budget. You know, we got a couple of $1 trillion in the hole. How are we going to solve this? We just won't help the people that we sent over to blow up other people that got blown up themselves. We won't help them so much. But we'll help other people because it helps our objective.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, we've said all we probably need to say on the left side of the ledger because, again, there's no defense of a position that this is somehow less evil and gross just because we happen to like the person who did it and that maybe there was a reason for why they did it because they're not just an evil bastard that, went and killed kids. We've said enough on that side of the ledger. So I just wanted to close this segment with talking to our friends on the right and even some libertarians that are, trying to say, well, hey, listen, okay, we're pro 2A and we're pro gun ownership, but listen, we got to draw a line with mental illness, right? Okay, as far as that goes, but just keep in mind that once you open that door, and they already wanted to do this over the last couple of years, it's a very short step from that to a reclassification that anti-vaxxers or bigots or anti-government people have a, quote, mental illness sufficient to deny their rights to guns. That's not a game you want to play because, as the old saying goes, conservatives are just liberals going the speed limit. They'll go as fast as they want to take as much as they want because they have all of the right answers and want to just remake the world in their image tomorrow. You just want it to take a few years to get there. Don't play that game with them. Do not play that game with the left. Because as soon as you start saying, oh yeah, well, I think we should have some red flags here, and I think we should maybe not let this person have a gun or that person have a gun or whatever, you are fighting a losing battle. Because they will take you seriously and they will take it all the way. And it's going to be your neck on the chopping block next. So this is the reason why principles are important. The very nature of principles is that they do not change despite the change in circumstances. That's what principles are. If you have them, great, stick to them. But you do yourself much more, and the broader liberty movement or pro-gun movement, much more of a disservice if on the one hand you say, I'm a principled pro-2A person, and then on the other, just because you didn't like who this person identified as or the political side that they can be attributed to because they're transgender, so we can probably say they're on the left, just to score some cheap political points, you want to jettison everything you said over here to justify taking guns away from a group of people that didn't do anything wrong. This individual did, but the group of transgender people as an entire, segment of society didn't do anything wrong. There's no reason to take their guns away. None at all. And you can say that's naive, and you can say that's stupid, libertarians that just won't see reality for what it is. Or you could say that, yeah, that's being principled. And sometimes principles lead you to uncomfortable conclusions. Call it uncomfortable, but at least it's principled. You know where we stand.
And if for nothing else, last point I want to make is that make all the laws you want. Most of the gun crime, take two, run it back. Most of the gun crime in this country are committed with illegally obtained weaponry. So write all the laws that you want. Chicago will still be a shooting gallery. California will still descend into disarray. And New York, hate to tell you, is still going to go further down the rabbit hole of people being law-abiding versus the people that are not law-abiding. And we'll see where they stack up. My whole point being is that just because somebody shoots up a school with a legally obtained weapon does not mean that they legally obtained it themselves. So all of this is conjecture. All of this is fodder. And all of this, it gets in the way of the true tragedy that 3 children died. And then I think another 3 administrators, either teachers or...
6 people, 6
in total.
6 total, I think, 3
children.
kids, yeah.
Right. 3 people lost their lives. And we needed to figure this out fast because it's not slowing down. We get 1 or 2 a year as we're going right now. And to go draconian and create laws and think that it's going to solve the issue is short-sighted at best. That's all I'll say.
Right.
Criminals don't follow the law.